Good afternoon, everybody. This afternoon's proceedings, like this morning's, are going to be transmitted after a 10-minute delay. As always, those with mobile devices may use them to transmit what they have heard in the hearing room after 10 minutes have elapsed. They may not be used for recording or photography. Mr. Barr.
Thank you. Mr. Francis, before lunch, I was saying you've been very candid with your mental health already, but I want to give you an opportunity, if you wish, to tell the Chairman more about the impact that your deployment has had upon you and any reflections you have about how the police could avoid psychiatric injury to their officers in the future, their undercover police officers,
Okay,
that is.
so am I directing it you or forward?
You're giving evidence to all of us, but I'm listening to what you have to say.
Okay, well, so basically the consequences of it was, for me, is catastrophic. It was the end of my police career. As far as I'm concerned, any other posting I had, I regarded the SDS as being a posting that I would have for the 4, maybe 5 years. They'd just returned, and before I arrived on the SDS, the squad I was on, which was B squad, which was the equivalent of counter-terrorism nowadays, they were very happy I would have stayed. S squad surveillance team wanted me, but really, other than a very short-term return back to special branch, it was the end of my career. So that's fundamentally, I had complex post-traumatic stress disorder by then and this identity disorder, which basically meant there are some documents that I've seen. Certainly, I think me as a returning person was not the same as what before I became undercover than what I was, and I became extremely difficult to work with. I no longer regarded myself as a police officer, and it was me, myself, who actually, after 2 years of trying to assimilate back in the special branch, I realised that, I was a danger to myself plus other people. I think the easiest way of describing it is, at the time I could have got a fight by myself in the lift. I remember somebody saying it to me, and that's where I was. Meanwhile, the special branch was just straight back into everything. I remember the ridiculous situation. They actually wanted to give me a gun. So almost as soon as I got back, they wanted me to reclaim myself as a firearms officer. I was off because I was hit a couple of times, as quite a lot of the activists were, by the police with these fancy new batons. It was quite hilarious. You get whacked with those. But all of a sudden, there I was supposed to be baton trained as well. For me, I looked at a baton. I can only associate it with being whacked with a baton, so I couldn't actually pick a baton up. And I had other anger issues, but yeah, they were quite happy. Here, go on your firearms course, and it's literally beforehand. So they took no account into how I was. There's countless examples of how angry I was, how sort of confrontational I was with the management. But literally, I'd gone in, I'd changed, I just couldn't go back into that police. How suggestions, if I believe that's what you're asking, is what I would suggest going forward, is I just do not believe that police officers should be doing undercover work against political activists. I think the state, if somebody decides, the state decides that they need to do it, we have the security services for that. I think there's actually something in the mindset, the returning officers, it's very easy to use the word like Stockholm or you've gone over. I just don't think they're appropriate. There is something fundamental that these people, the vast majority, are trying to do progressive change, and we are, as the police is there to keep society where it is, and us being them trying to do progressive change, it causes some sort of mindset shift. So the easiest way is police officers shouldn't do that. Certainly undercover in counter-terrorism and serious organised crime, absolutely. But I personally, for that, it should have always been the work of the security services, not the police. That's me with 25 years worth of hindsight. If the event, I wouldn't be as bold to make any suggestions for you for your final report, but if the event it carries on and the police officers are doing it, you really need a psychiatric assessment beforehand, most definitely. Whether or not it would have failed, I don't know, nobody knows. You also need a psychiatric of the support system you have. So if you're married, there's no disrespect to my ex-wife. She had problems, I had problems, but she couldn't give any more to look after me with her problems. So had she'd been assessed, I don't know how you do it, but some sort of assessment that there is some sort of proper support system, and an officer just going around having a cup of tea and seeing how the family is isn't sufficient. I've been made aware of a document sometime in 2000, 2001 that there is an actual programme whereby the SDS officers are being interviewed before deployments, during deployment, a certain period of time, and afterwards. And basically, I don't know how good that is, and hopefully that's a very, very good programme. And I would suggest at least anything up to about 2 years post-deployment there otherwise. The other thing that I found personally helped me to understand what happened, as this is about 10 years after I left, I went on to a professional acting course. Last thing I ever want to do is act again. But on there, this is the National Film and Television School, is a proper course, not a made-up one. And what struck me is that there's actual parallels with the tutor there was very, very knowledgeable, and she was actually saying there are actors, professional actors, on par with like the method actors and all this stuff, who get into role and they get too much in role and can't come out. And that's the first time I had a conversation with anybody who I actually thought she understood what there was. And they emphasise onto their acting course, even at this very, very low level, is to understand, and you must keep pulling yourself away from the role. And really, that's as much as I can think without Mr. Barr asking me some more questions to help me come along type thing.
The only question I think I'd like to invite you to expand upon is, could you help us with how much aftercare you personally had and whether it was sufficient?
0 is the best way of describing that as a summary. And basically on the SDS, it was after I went out, there was profiling, so her name's the assistant, that's Felicity Golding. She done it, but I've already explained that some of the officers still done it, shouldn't have done it. We then had somebody who I best refer to as a punishment counsellor, and that was basically, she was an army psychiatrist, and basically if in the event of the SDS, say for example these interactions I had with my manager were quite heated, but had I crossed over further, say grabbed hold of one or something done physically, I know I would have seen what we call the punishment counsellor, and I'm aware of somebody who was sent to go and see him, but I never heard of anybody going to see him because they themselves were opening up with having problems. So I had nothing whatsoever. Then when I came off, there was an incident that I couldn't remember that happened to me in uniform, and literally as soon as I started back, there was this upset that for 5 years I hadn't been able to be approached by Complaints Bureau over this. Long and the short of it, they recommended that I go and see a psychiatrist through it. I went back to the SDS, series of conversations, this isn't just one, basically saying that they want me to go and see somebody. I'm concerned about going to see somebody outside the SDS. Can I use yours? And they turned around and said, no, you can't use ours because we have to keep it secret from the police who we're using on the secret squad. Right, fair enough. But when you go and see the Met one, you mustn't say what you did. So that was my actual welfare, is they then realised there was something wrong with me, but the SDS wouldn't have me because CIB as an outside was looking into the special branch. So they wouldn't say, oh, we're actually using this. The names of the system, it's Colonel Mary Piper. We won't use her. I then had to go to, and I did, I entered the system, sort of, well, what's the point? And really, what is the point? I was sitting there with a counsellor, and she goes, well, I know you can't tell me anything about what you did. How are you feeling? And it's just sort of extraordinary. I went through months of it with, there's nothing. So there was nothing in place for me, and that was literally until I then ended up going sick. I started civil proceedings through. I didn't want to do civil proceedings, but I was sick. The Central Police Federation. I had to go outside the branch. because the branch I felt would contain it. So I went to New Scotland Yard Main Police Federation, who actually said this is ridiculous, because had you been an SO10 officer, we would have had some coverage for you. So I went into that. They then actually, and I then crossed over, I went into the Ticehurst Priory clinic, but as an outpatient always, and that's when sort of the beginning of my recovery started there. But that wasn't till the beginning of the millennium, 2000. So despite having gone sick in September 99, it was in the millennium, those few months, that all of a sudden things started to move for me.
You brought a civil claim. We don't need to go into the specifics of the civil claim, but what I would like to know is what was the reaction of your former SDS colleagues to the fact that you were bringing civil litigation about the SDS in the courts?
Well, firstly, I was totally abandoned as soon as I went sick. So I don't know, like you think you get mental illness through meeting people or something, but other than the one officer who then also done the civil claim with me after I went sick, I had no contact of all my colleagues, so-called friends, people saying friends question it. I had no contact at all, and that even goes, unfortunately to say, to Trevor Morris, who I was very close to. Zero contact of anybody because I'd actually gone sick. So by the time I reached the civil claim, I had no input from what anybody's feeling about was to me, because I was already abandoned. I've got to say, it's probably no surprise to anybody in the room, there was a containment exercise around me, and that was conducted by Bob Lambert. So literally as soon as I went sick, and I went sick, saying 2-year anniversary of my SDS, that was the 27th of September 1999. The next day, Bob Lambert was there to make sure I was all okay, but I was aware that what they were putting around me was a containment plan. And basically he wanted to ensure that I was not well, but was I going to breach the golden rule and actually say, this is what I was doing the SDS. So all I said to him is, we're safe. There's another officer involved in as well, and I assured him he had, in a word, control. He had more control of me. You had zero control of this other officer, but through me being the conduit, I established to the SDS that basically both of us were safe. Both of us were ill. There was no intention. That the only concern they had was the media, or walking into one of the solicitors here who had their own file. Like, just imagine had I walked into Bindman's or something like that. That's what they were terrified of. So the fact I was then being contained, they gave me a good service, but I was also being contained because I was with Russell Jones and Walker, the police solicitors. Had I gone somewhere else, that would have been almost like an attack on the SDS. So they were safe. The solicitors that you're using, you're now within the Ticehurst system. You don't want to get back at us. There's nothing going on. No, Bob, seriously, we're ill. I can't speak for the other officer, but this is it. And I actually envisaged 3, 6, maybe a year, I don't know, in my head, maximum of 2 years, that this ridiculous civil claim would work. Didn't even want to do it. I wanted an apology would happen to us. It ended up being dragged out for 5 years. And who I was particularly angry with, you talk about people I was angry with, was Roger Pearce. Because Roger Pearce was the commander, and during that period of time, he would have had the final say within Special Branch to say to the Metropolitan Police, we can't go to court. And we went all the way through 5 years, and literally the Friday before the Monday, the police capitulated because they didn't want the publicity of the case going forward. We were totally anonymised. I was Officer A, Officer B. We were anonymised. We weren't going to tell anybody, but they still feared that somehow somebody would become knowledgeable about this. But yeah, I felt as soon as I went sick, there was an SDS containment plan put around me the whole time to make sure that I didn't give anything out.
Your litigation settles shortly before trial. We understand from your written witness statement that there's a presentation of your commendation. Trevor Morris comes to that, D.I. Lambert comes to that, and there is talk at that after that event of the 2008 forthcoming 40th anniversary dinner for the SDS. And Mr. Lambert, you've said in your statement, made clear that you would be welcome and invited to that.
Slight caveat on it, he was hoping.
Hoping.
There was that, but I'd built my expectations up. As we'd said, helped organise the 25th reunion. Didn't go to the 30th because I was deployed, but I went to the 35th because I was already back into there. I wasn't invited to the 40th one.
So, the presentation has been made, the litigation is over, Bob Lambert is hopeful you can go to the 40th. How are you feeling at that point?
Well, at that point also I was in treatment with a very renowned psychiatrist, like world-renowned psychiatrist that was dealing. I'm not going to say his name because he's currently not well himself, but he saw it as being very important to me that at the end of it I was sort of accepted back into the SDS, that, you know, at the end of the day, the only reason I'd stopped doing it was because of mental health. That was, the police had to admit for court purposes, was directly attributed to my SDS work. So I think the fact that I would have been invited to the reunion, I think psychiatrically for me would have been a real settlement. I think that would have allowed a shift to go forward.
Closure.
Very much hoping so, very, very much hoping so.
And then you describe in your witness statement how closer to the time you're in contact with D.I. Lambert, who explains to you that you are not invited. Could you help us with the terms in which he did so?
Yes, Bob being Bob, what he emphasised is how very, very hard he did try for me on his behalf, so whether or not he did or otherwise. And the term he used, he wasn't himself a Mason, but anybody who knew the police in that era, or particularly the special branch, was very heavily Mason dominated. And basically he said that the black balls had exceeded the white balls with regards to you coming out, being invited to the do.
And did he say anything else?
I probed further. I said, could you give me an idea, you know, like, was it like a manager specifically? Not being a Mason, never want to be a Mason. I don't know if one black ball means that's the end of you, or do you need, like, you know, if you get 10 but there's 9, it goes through. So I literally asked him, is it a particular person or what otherwise? He turned around and said no. From a management perspective, there was only 2 people, so that's the entire management structure. So it's everybody from the SDS from its inception all the way to there. There was actually only 2 managers who actually wanted me to go. And one of them obviously was him. The other one I know is covered, but it's HN72.
Did Mr. Lambert say anything to you about why you were being blackballed?
Yes, because the word he used, they described me as being disloyal.
Can you describe to us the impact that being called disloyal had upon you?
I think the phone call ended quite rapidly with quite a lot of swearing to Bob at the time. I've had anger during the course of my life, but that anger was on a different level. Psychiatric terms, very, very limited. I am the host. I am the host of me. This is Peter Francis is here, but I have a dark side, a black side, and I normally can control the host. As the host, I can control. I couldn't control. The alt, technical psychiatric term, overtook the host. And there was a battle for quite a while, and then host took over. I let him then carry on, and literally by the morning, I knew that my idea now, the alt's idea, was to show the SDS what actual disloyalty was. And I'd read, coincidentally, reasonable while earlier, a book by a very respected author that I respect a lot. It's a chap called Tony Thompson. And he wrote a book called The Infiltrators about 2 undercover police officers and SO10, and they talked about what they did during the operations. And I actually looked at the book, and bear in mind, I also was given an SO10 identity for something else, but I was surprised when I read the book at the level of information they gave out, plural. There was a lot of tactical stuff, in there. And so I thought, well, I'm not aware of these two officers going to prison because they've also breached the OSA. They're not on the level of the OSA breaching, but they've definitely breached the OSA as well. So the next thing I literally did that morning is I wrote, it's an email, to Tony Thompson's agent, however you do it on Google. I didn't know it beforehand, Google. And then within about a day, Tony Thompson, I basically said to him, something along the lines of, are you interested in meeting me? Because in The Infiltrators, there's a book, and it actually says something like, there's no such thing as permanent undercover officers. Because SO10, very briefly, they go in, they pretend they're a hitman for a few weeks. This isn't giving anything away, it's known. Hitman for a few weeks, drug dealers for a few weeks, somebody will kill your wife for a couple of weeks, and they go back to being police officers. And there was just a couple of lines in there. It said something like, there's nobody who's permanently undercover. So I approached Tony, but I actually approached him, he then met me, and there was just one thing I asked for. It was nothing to do with the money, it was the book. What I said to him is I must have legal coverage. I want a very, very good solicitor because the Metropolitan Police, the SDS, are not going to react to this well. And when I then went over and decided to do him, that was the anticipation that the Met Police were going to hit me and hit me hard with a view of the OSA. I spoke to my lead psychiatrist at the time, and basically what I said to him is I would rather have 2 years in prison than carry on with this after this disloyal thing. He wasn't that chuffed with about it all, but he could get his head around what I was trying to say. And that's how I felt. And to this day, I'm saying any threats. I've had OSA following threats on. I've had very gentle threats there, insignificant. And I genuinely felt I'd rather spend 2 years. It would have been solitary confinement because they would have not wanted me talking to the prison population. So I would have been by myself in a cell for a couple of years compared to the rest of my life with this bouncing around in my head.
You were plainly very angry at that stage after the conversation with Mr. Lambert. Can you help us whether that level of anger has endured or whether it has fluctuated? No,
nowhere near it. Nowhere near it. That was there. The events then set in motion. And we couldn't get a book published. There's conspiracy theories left, right, and centre everywhere. But Tony went along to every single publisher, and this is a well-published author, and he just was over and over again. The OSA were not going down there, so we ended up doing an article via the Observer, Sunday, 14th of March 2010. That's when that became out. And my anger level, and it's never leveled against anybody. There's a whole series of people. For example, the psychiatric care, that was nothing to do with anybody. That was just poor decision making. If anybody, it was probably Roger Pierce I had the most anger towards because he made the case sound. But I had a huge difference with regard to my anger. I still do get angry. But I get angry in areas, say, for example, that's why I've got a counsellor here, my legal team briefed you as well. I would get very, very angry if you carried on persistently trying to press my head to get me to one of the demonstrations I was on. This is the host alt type thing. The alt was the person who was involved in these battles. I can't recall them. So if you have very graciously scouted around the issues for me, but had you pressed it, it's just not pleasant. So I would become disproportionately angry to you. You're a very pleasant person. I've seen you for 10 years now, questioning people. But I would become, my team's seen on a couple of occasions as well, if they press too hard in an area. That's why my statement has got missing bits. It's not their fault. It's my fault. I can't go there. And as soon as I start pressing it, they've got to deal with me getting all angry. So everybody goes, all right, let's not worry about that. Let's do the next paragraph. So that is me. So it's not directed at an individual. It's whoever currently wants to have a fight with me.
We have seen the series of articles in the media. We've got evidence of your television appearances and so forth. Can you help us with the reaction of your former SDS colleagues to your blowing the whistle on what the SDS was doing?
The only time I actually had any contact, like things like I was getting phone calls at home, phone was being put down saying, and they gave my children's names. They just sort of said, you know what we're doing, but we know this is your son's name and all that. So I had some of that beforehand. I had a few. Bob being Bob, Bob's far too clever to actually say, you know, fear the OSA. It was always along the lines of we don't know where the OSA is going to go. If you do this civil claim, we don't know where everything's going. So when I actually went over, became a whistleblower, I was already so far removed from the SDS circles, I had no interaction whatsoever. But I certainly felt that if there was any chance whatsoever that the special branch could prosecute me under the OSA, I'd been very clearly warned. And my first thing, you know, you, if you were trying to prosecute me, you would have said, were you warned about the Official Secrets Act? And yes, I was warned when I joined the police. I was warned again when I joined the special branch. Every squad you went to, you were reminded about your role in the Official Secrets Act, the same as the SDS. So I didn't need another reminder. They didn't need to remind me because that was self-evident.
Was there any reaction to your whistleblowing from the wider Metropolitan Police Service?
No, just when the Operation Hearn started, I had a visit from them, but that was later on, so it wasn't immediate and nobody came round.
I'm going to move on to another topic now. There's going to be a series of miscellaneous topics sweeping up. You've given some evidence in your Officer A witness statement about the SDS having a number of unofficial mottos, one of which you say was by any means necessary. Protecting anonymity, can you help us with who you got that from?
Dead easy, just conversation between me and Trevor. That's HN78. There was other ones as well. I think whatever field they were in, they would just sort of have the habits of their people they were out. It was only sort of conversations within the SDS. So if the left were within groups that had the slogan occasionally by any means necessary, it was long established. It's a Panther one, it was a left-wing one. So it'd be that. It wasn't like, you know, like a T-shirt, the SDS, you know, by any means necessary will go there. But it was as accepted. I think it was quite a good way of describing what the deep swimmers were feeling when they were on the SDS.
Was there ever any connection made between by any means necessary and the use of sexual relationships with members of the public?
Not specifically, but that's that whole attitude to the deep swimmers.
I want to ask you now to take you back to early in your evidence when you were telling us about the advice you were taking on building your undercover identity. Can I ask you, first of all, did Trevor Morris ever say anything to you to shed light upon whether or not he or anyone on his behalf had investigated the family of Anthony Lewis?
No, but I'd like to say something about that in relation, if I'm allowed to. But nothing, you know, there's an answer. The answer to that is no, is clearly. But something when I heard Trevor giving his evidence, you know, no disrespect, everybody's recall seems to be a bit differently, but I did find it very difficult to believe that he didn't do his own research in St Catherine's house and somehow the senior management did it for him. Now HN86, I can almost imagine the scenario. You say to HN86, I don't want to go to St Catherine's house to do the work. It's just never going to happen. So I don't know if Trevor has forgotten, but he has walked around a graveyard, or he has gone to St Catherine's house, or he is off the SDS. If you're not prepared to do that first bit of work, it's just an inconceivable thing. And if you were to run it, you can certainly ask John Webb when he's sitting there as well. Ask John Webb, you know, you're a really busy reporting sergeant. The person in the back office is supposed to be doing all the rubbish jobs, and he wants you to go and do the job for him. So that, memory-wise, I would prefer it. I could appreciate why he may not want to put his hands up to having the identity of this particular child. But, you know, own your mistakes. I think you move on far better if you own your mistakes.
Your mentor, we understand it was HN122.
Yes.
Same question with HN122. Did he ever say anything to you about whether he or anyone on his behalf had investigated the deceased child's family in his case?
More than just looking at the birth certificate.
More than birth and death certificate?
No.
You said in the course of one of your answers earlier this week that dodgy conversations happened in Bob Lambert's back garden.
Yes.
Could you help by expanding upon what you meant by dodgy conversations?
Well, one would definitely be this Macpherson, the whole thing of going there. That was there. One of them, not all of them, but we definitely had one there. One was about my extraction plan for my trip abroad that wasn't there. Just trying to think. When I think of all of them, I've probably done about three, if not 4 times. I can't recall anymore, but basically there's a reason that they were uncomfortable, and it coincided with there's another event, but there's a big Metropolitan Police event, the CIRCS, the South East Regional Crime Squad. They had their offices bugged by what was then called CIB 3, the Ghost Squad. They'd actually bugged them. This is known in the papers, and a number of officers were arrested over it. And there was a paranoia by the SDS, once again paranoia whether or not it's valid, that anything too secret wouldn't be discussed there. But that was only Bob Lambert. Everybody else seemed quite happy, but Bob had another layer of security on top.
So just to be clear, the conversation about the Lawrence inquiry, is that relating to the evidence you gave this morning?
Yes.
About your concerns for
Yes,
yourself?
but one of them, but only one of them. The other ones took place in the offices.
I asked you quite a lot of questions earlier in the week about your targeting. Could I zoom out, please, and ask you about the targeting of black justice campaigns in general by the SDS? Was there anything that makes the targeting of black justice campaigns by the SDS stand out from their targeting of other groups?
Yes, it was the perceived potential for disorder. There was a different worry about whenever there was a demonstration that involved more black participants in it, particularly younger male. That was the worrying side. It was always a different level when you put it in. But I think that is, once again, as we said throughout last week, the racist mindset of the police.
Mr. Francis, thank you very much indeed for your patience with me. Though that is the end of my questioning at this stage, so may we have the usual short break to see whether there are any further applications for me to question Mr. Francis?
Certainly, and then I anticipate there may be some re-examination.
So, yes.
Yes. Almost there, but not quite.
No worries, sir. Thank you.
15 minutes. Mr.
I
Parker.
think that's a spoiler alert for a second wind. Quantico in America.
Well,
We understand that HN86 went to the United States. Did he tell you anything about what he had learnt in America from the FBI about the psychological impact of undercover deployments on undercover police officers?
didn't talk to me specifically about it, but he'd gone over there, just to put it in perspective, because of the Mike Chitty saga that we've gone over there. So he went over. He didn't discuss at length to me, but I was certainly aware that he then spent quite a considerable time constructing like an SDS policy document that included that. And because of his visit over there, it certainly coincided with the appointment of Felicity, whatever her name was, to do the psychometric testing. But he didn't discuss with me the ins and outs of what he discussed.
Did he go before your time or after or during your time?
During it.
Are you sure it is linked to Mike Chitty, or is that just an assumption on your part?
No, it was a definite one. It was because of that. And don't forget, whenever it ended, it doesn't matter. It was ongoing. The Chitty saga was there, so he's there. They always had a previous event as well, which was HN4. So you had two events that was going over there for. But as far as I was aware, it involved the Mike Chitty one. But it could have also been because of HN4 where the pressure came from.
You gave some evidence when I was asking you about blacklisting.
Yes.
About your sergeant in C Squad going for lunch with a contact.
Yes.
The name you wrote down was Lord McAlpine.
Yes.
Lord McAlpine is dead, so we do not have any privacy concerns. Can you help us? Is it your evidence that your sergeant was going to meet Lord McAlpine personally or not?
Yes, and he had previously been his protection officer as well. I don't know why Lord McAlpine had protection at some point by the special branch, but he'd been previously for that. But I know within the context of it all that the Economics League was involved in somehow with this as well. I don't know what the combination was, but I know it just wasn't for him, so I don't know if then McAlpine gives it to that or vice versa. I don't know.
Are you sure that it was not a representative of the company, Sir Robert McAlpine?
I didn't go, but there's no reason to suppose this officer would say to me, I'm having a lunch with Lord McAlpine, if it wasn't him. But I wasn't there.
Two specific questions now. In your Rule 9 statement and previous accounts, you referred to a list of all the visitors. In your evidence on Monday, you said it was a list of all visitors not known to the Special Branch Registry. Did you change your evidence on this because it has been pointed out that it would make no sense to take a list of all the visitors to you and not the registry?
No, it's just purely at the time of making the statement, I didn't include those additional words.
Why would HN86 give you, an undeployed person in the back office preparing to deploy against anarchists, a list of names not in the registry, rather than a deployed officer or a detective sergeant responsible for writing reports?
I think I went over it yesterday, that basically it was a menial task. It just purely was a menial task in the back office. As far as I was aware, he would have asked the various officers that I detailed yesterday to have had a look at the list with nothing. So I then, as a menial task, and also, as explained, I'd been looking at those officers' books because I'd been dealing with their inquiries for however months it was that he came over with the list. So all I had to do was go back through all the officers' books that I've been dealing with and say, yeah, there is no trace in these books, as opposed to asking the officers. He wouldn't have given additional task to, Tin Man Bob or John Webb. They were busy enough. And these sort of menial tasks is really what the back office was. But yes, there wasn't for me to look at there and then. That was then later when I was deployed. That was then became my list. But certainly earlier on, there was no reason for me to look at it for me.
Did HN86 give you any instructions as to how to conduct the task?
It's quite a simple office task. I wasn't to contact Special Branch Registry because that had been done. So it's quite a simple task for me to go through the books that was there. So I'm sure it was something to the words of effect of have a look through the books in case they've missed something along that lines.
Thank you. Sir, you will have noticed we had a straggler. May I ask for a further 5 minutes, please?
Of course. Straggler is about to approach.
Mr. Francis,
Mr. Brown.
we're not quite sure when you were talking about an SDS contingency plan. Did you say SDS sexual contingency plan?
No, just a contingency plan.
You made a reference to Mr. Jenner's dodgy tradecraft in terms which I understood you to be talking about him leaving his real credit card around.
Correct, yeah.
Did you know about that? When did you first know about that?
The media purely. And to me, I don't know what the date was, but if somebody like Bob Lambert was aware of that, that's an instantaneous off the squad. You'll be coming off the squad.
I took you to your leaving card and the comment about them all being weary fuckers who deserve to die. Did you ever hear any officer talking about a deceived woman with that sentiment, by which I mean anything to suggest that they were having sexual relations with someone essentially because they regarded them as a weary fucker?
No.
Can you recall an occasion when you spoke to John Burke Monaville and you said anything to the effect to him that Mark Jenner directly targeted the Trevor Monaville campaign?
No, Mr. Monaville, I don't know if he's here, but he's been on numerous events here listening to the evidence, and he's approached me very courteously, and I've spoken to him just because I was here and I'm in the public gallery with him, and he asked me directly if I ever spied on his campaign, and my response was no, because I didn't. I just said if there was anybody in the SDS, my suggestion may have been, because the area would be Mark Jenner, but it was along the lines of, obviously, wait till you hear his evidence. But no, I didn't say anything. I hope it wasn't misunderstood what I was trying to say. And obviously, it's something that's only been rectified for this tranche. But in tranche 1, tranche 2, I was always sitting in the public gallery. And, you know, I would do the same. These people are trying to get some answers to impossible questions. So I was approached by not just Mr. Monaville, but other people with similar sort of questions. So I didn't deflect him because I didn't want to answer his question. I deflected him with truth, as in hopefully Mark Jenner will be able to answer your questions, because I can't.
Going back to your evidence about the time shortly after Stephen Lawrence was murdered, you gave some evidence about Mark Wadsworth being a person of knowing that Mark Wadsworth was a person of interest. How at that stage did you know Mr. Wadsworth was a person of interest?
Because I'm not quite sure if he's the organiser of ARA at the time, the Anti-Racist Alliance, but I was aware that he was senior in it. I can't remember if I knew that he was the organiser, but I was aware that he was senior within ARA.
And is that knowledge that predated Stephen's murder or postdates it?
Round about the same time, as in, so by the time he comes out the house, the time he came out the house, that he was obviously known. I didn't know he'd come out the house, but his name was not on the list. His name was on the list, so somebody must have known who he was, because it wasn't one of the names I had to search. So somebody, not me, must have known who he was, because that name was not on the list anymore.
And how did you know it would have been in the first place?
I didn't, but he's obviously somebody who's come out the house. Mr. Khan's name wasn't on the list. Michael Mansfield's name wasn't on the list. So somebody has already taken the known suspects type thing out of Special Branch.
When you say come out of the house, do you mean there was television footage of Mr. Wadsworth coming out of the house? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm presuming it's the same list of names that was given over to the branch.
I see. Back to Lord MacAlpine.
Yes.
Did the sergeant say anything to you which would shed any light upon whether Lord MacAlpine wished to speak to your sergeant about political or industrial matters?
No idea whatsoever. But he gave me that list of names, so I don't know what context that names was, but it's within the economic league type thing. So I can't answer it. I didn't want to ask the sergeant a deeper question on whatever's going on.
My recollection of your evidence, you must correct me if I'm wrong, is you said something to the effect that the names were people connected to the construction industry or something like that. Is that right?
No, it's because of who Lord MacAlpine was with regards to MacAlpine business.
The names you were asked, the names of the people whose files you were asked to check.
Yes.
What type of people were they?
I presuming building, because that's how it was said to me that he's having lunch with Lord MacAlpine, and can you please check these names?
You say presuming building. Can you actually remember?
I certainly wouldn't have been told that. I certainly wouldn't have been told that. Here's a list of names, and I'm meeting with Lord MacAlpine for lunch. So I don't know if that was... I can't work out why else he might want to have a list of names, but maybe, I don't know, want other name search in the special branch.
Thank you. Those are my questions, sir.
Mr. Cand, your equipment all working?
It is now, thank you, sir. Mr. Francis, I want to go back to near the beginning of your evidence and ask you about your actual raw intelligence reports. Can we bring up, please, paragraph 75 of Mr. Francis's witness statement, which is 36012-13. It says, however, our raw intelligence reports were filed away in boxes, one for each undercover officer, in a safe in the back office. These have not been disclosed to me at the time of writing this statement. Can I just confirm, since you wrote that statement some 2 years ago, those raw intelligence reports have never been disclosed to you, or as far as you know, the inquiry? Is that right?
In all the documents I've looked through and all the documents I've been given for the purpose of me appearing for this inquiry, there's not a single report that I have ever personally written.
Thank you. And just to understand a little bit more about the process, can we look next at paragraph 383 of Mr. Francis's, the same witness statement, please, which is 36012-65. So it's, have we got it up? Yes, 383. You say there, Mr. Francis, my raw intelligence reports were ordinarily just for my reporting sergeant, i.e. primarily John Webb. I expressed myself in my usual way in my reports, and John would summarize, cut out, or reword things as he saw fit for consumption by special branch or whoever was the intended recipient of the reporting. Now, can I just ask you, it's as I've understood your evidence so far, also in some circumstances he would reflect your raw intelligence in a composite report. Is that correct?
Correct.
I want to move then to ask you very briefly about your reporting on Welling in October 1993. You were taken to a stewarding report. You told us, I think it was on Tuesday, that you inputted into composite reports in relation to Welling. I think you said you inputted into a pre-event report. We have identified what looks like a composite post-event report, which was not in your witness pack, and I'd like to have a look at that, please, with you. That's UCPI 25694-2, please. Now, yes, if we go to the top, this does not appear to have been attributed to you, but if you look at the final paragraph of the second page, is that what we've got up? Now, you can see there that it's talking about Kingsway Anti-Fascist Group and Lewis. Do you want to have a quick read of it?
Thank you. Okay.
Is it correct, and if I've got this wrong, please tell me, is it correct that you would have provided this specific intelligence section of this post-Welling report?
Yes. I would have done. I was the one near Lewis there.
Sorry, I missed that.
It would have been me. Yes, it would have been me.
It couldn't have been anyone else, could it?
No.
Could I ask you specifically about the final sentence? It says the police would inevitably lose control and the bookshop would be theirs. What bookshop would be theirs? What does that mean?
As in what I tried to explain yesterday, that they were certainly intent on destroying, damaging that bookshop, as described. The activists are describing it as a Nazi bunker. So that's what they wanted to do, was destroy that bookshop.
Thank you. I want to go back, please, to paragraph 75 of your witness statement. There's no need to bring it up, but I'll tell you, I think you've got it in front of me, but I'll tell you, it says the final reports were sent off to Special Branch, to B or C Squad, or to the security services. I rarely had anything come back to me about my intelligence reports. I never had any complaints or feedback that what I was reporting was not what they were looking for. Now, is it fair to say that you would have expected to have been told if your reporting was inconsistent with SDS practices?
Absolutely, immediately.
Were you ever asked by your managers to define or clarify further what you meant by violence or violent when necessary?
No.
They understood the terminology, is that
Yes.
right? Thank you. I want to go back to a question that Mr. Barr has asked you about what has been called your smearing tasking by HN86. Mr. Barr said to you that there was a marked absence of written corroboration of HN86's tasking of you. Now, you have been taken to your targeting strategy into the YRE and others as devised by HN86. I want to take you, please, to paragraph 255 of your UCPI witness statement, which is 36012-44. Thank you. It says the only written tasking I ever received was the one document at the beginning of my deployment and a withdrawal strategy at the end. Other than that, I received no written taskings. Is that assertion still accurate?
Absolutely.
On a related point, as I understand your evidence to this inquiry, once an undercover officer is given an overarching strategy, such as that was set out in your targeting strategy, is it your evidence that you would not then be given specific further written taskings within what was considered to be your overarching tasking?
Correct. Once they had enough to show, it really was for the more senior officers to have this is where we're sending the person. And then the same at the end of your time, they would do one report for senior officers to say you're coming off and this is it. But that's correct. I never had a single tasking otherwise.
So is it fair to say that reporting on Black Justice campaigns was considered by both you and your managers to have been subsumed within your general tasking?
Within the Youth Against Racism in Europe tasking, yes.
In your evidence yesterday, when being asked about the low number of intelligence reports on Black Justice campaigns, you appear to suggest that where there wasn't an intelligence report, there was inactivity. I just want to clarify this. In your witness statement, and this is UCPI 36012-59, paragraph 349, you say, it's not up yet, sorry. You're talking about intelligence reports relating to Black Justice campaigns here, and you say, as above, a large quantity of my intelligence on the demonstrations I attended is also missing from my witness pack. I attended at least one demonstration in respect of each of the single issue campaign groups listed above, i.e. at paragraph 324. And for each demonstration file, a pre-assessment report prior to attending and a post-assessment form after the event. I do not think any of these reports have been disclosed within my witness pack. I've only seen a couple of documents relating to the Winston Silcott Defence Campaign and the Brian Douglas campaign, and these were reports that were put to you. Can I just be clear? Are you saying you did report frequently on those Black Justice campaigns as per your witness statement, and those reports are missing, or are you saying something else?
A combination of both. There are definitely missing reports pre and there, but also if the campaigns themselves weren't doing anything and for a number of months maybe they're awaiting an outcome or some sort of process, there wouldn't be anything to attend. So there's a combination of both, but yes, I had forgotten that there was, when we were going through making the statement, when I was actually asked, I kept saying repeatedly there should be more demonstration ones because I was aware I'd done a lot more. When I was looking towards Mark Jenner's stuff, I noticed there was 2 in there that I highlighted to my team were definitely 100% mine, and they were attributed to him. And I was trying to do it in the other statements, so I don't know if some of my it's like Trevor was that, given that AFA one, there's nothing to do with Trevor at all. So there are some of my other ones, no doubt, elsewhere. But yes, a combination between the two. But in answer to Mr. Barr, there was also certain times that the actual demonstrations didn't do anything, but I was certainly in a position that if I ever heard there was a demonstration or a vigil, I'd be able to go on it.
Thank you. The term collateral intrusion, we've heard it a few times during the course of this inquiry. Can I ask you, was this a term used by either the special branch or the SDS when you were there?
So were you going to ask me a separate question on that? Because I'd already asked about this question. I see Mr. Barr hasn't come with that question. Did you want to ask me that or I answer?
No, I'll listen to your answer to Mr.
Okay,
Kent.
because I'd asked this earlier. I was
Yes,
aware
so
that the area
I'm asking you.
that it hadn't been covered. So basically, it's total and utter nonsense. Basically, I've experienced this during the inquiry once before, and this was the made-up. My Latin at school wasn't too good. It was one of the classes I didn't attend very well, but it's ex post facto. They've made it up. And I've done it once before. We had it with regards to neither confirm nor deny. Now, my whole legal team with us, we spent day after day at the initial hearings arguing that neither confirm or deny never existed on the SDS. We can't give these officers anonymity because of that. And basically, with regards to this collateral intrusion, it wasn't that. This is made up afterwards. That's never expression I heard ever in any sense of the SDS. And me personally, I find it themselves, they've said it's insulting, but it is insulting. And it's actually, when I was reporting, I was focusing on whoever I was focusing on. So if I'm writing reports about my tenants at just a YRE event, that's a YRE event. If I'm then drawing my attention, I'm going on your demonstration, you are not collateral, don't accept the terminology, it's a police one. I am reporting specifically and definitely on you. I'm trying to find out about your campaign, who's running it, what you're doing. That's not incidental, that's me focusing. And if any campaign, if they somehow manage to all join together into a campaign and it wasn't run by anybody and it became big enough, an officer, if those groups were all organising across London, coordinated, and they weren't controlled by the YRE or anybody else, there may have been sufficient grounds to send an SDS officer just into that campaign. I just think it's just made up by the police, and I never heard that terminology ever in the SDS. I was expected to report back on these justice campaigns, the families. That's not incidental, that's not collateral intrusion, that's deliberate, there's no other word, it's deliberate police spying of your campaign.
Thank you. You've given evidence to this inquiry that whatever you were asked to do, you effectively provided zero intelligence on the Stephen Lawrence campaign or the family, as there was no intelligence for you to gather. I think you've called it negative intelligence. Bearing that in mind, you were shown a document setting out the Metropolitan Police Service commendation and the reasons for it. Would you expect such a commendation to include a tasking that didn't come up with anything? You were asked, why doesn't it include the Lawrence family?
Yes, it wouldn't include that, but I also would say that anything to do with that campaign in that particular period of time would have been too sensitive to put on paper as well. But no, 100% you're right. Why would they thank me for something that I couldn't actually do?
Now, you have provided various accounts and interviews to the media over the years, Mr. Francis. Have you ever received any payment for any of these accounts?
Absolutely none whatsoever. No, and that's the TV documentaries, programmes, anything whatsoever. I've never received anything. And I would just like to emphasise to the chair, and my team can definitely also say this, numerous media inquiries once the inquiry started under your predecessor, and I have refused every single media interview, feeling that the right forum is here in front of you and not for me. Some of the things I've said here have already been unfortunately sensationalised already in some of the media through what I've been saying here, and that's why I didn't want to say anything. It was to give my evidence in front of you, sir, as opposed to the media. But yes, correct, not a single penny out of it.
I want to now take you to one of your exhibits, please. It's exhibit PF12, which is UCPI 36016-125. Let me scroll up, yes. Mr. Francis, you say in your witness statement that this was a shield awarded to you by MI5. Can you tell us a bit more?
If I'm allowed to, but basically at the end of my STS tour, when it was coming to an end, I was presented by a very senior MI5 officer in thanks for the work that I'd done whilst I was on the STS on behalf of the security services.
And approximately when was that? You say
Yeah,
at the
definitely
end of
before I
this-
left, May, June time 1996.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Francis, I think you would be the first to admit that you are a complicated guy. But are you a fantasist?
Definitely complex, like you were saying. You've had nearly 10 years of my company, so I think you'll be the first at the queue to say I'm rather complex, possibly difficult to work with. But no, I'm not. And I've had enough psychiatric care for nearly a quarter of a century, and I've never ever had that word given to me in any psychiatric context whatsoever.
It's been 15 years since you first blew the whistle and risked prosecution under the Official Secrets Act. 10 years since this inquiry was set up. You've told us about your fragile mental health. You've been publicly criticised by those you spied upon, as well as numerous police officers. You know that there is hostility towards you in this room, and yet you've stayed the course and come here to be robustly questioned for 4 days by Mr. Barr. Why?
Because the inquiry, I never set out to have an inquiry formed. Literally was, this is my story, and then leave. But once the inquiry was set up, I felt as, I didn't even think 15 years later I'd be the only whistleblower, but as the only whistleblower, I felt my duty is to stay with the course, that the day will arrive, that has done this week, that I appear before you and give you my evidence. So that's why I've stood with it, and I'm here. I did think on Monday, as a joke to my team, would have been hilarious if I'd also got an aircraft and took off. Having done 4 days of this, I think I would have preferred to have got on that aeroplane and also gone away. But yes, I did stay the course, and I will also stay to the end of the course till I read your report, and available if you wanted anything else off me during this period.
Now, Ms. Francis, those are my questions. I understand you wanted to say something else to the chair.
You've done the vast of it, but basically what it is just, if I'm allowed to, just something very minor.
Yes, you are.
And the only reason is my team can verify, because they've already had the media requests come through, so it's just to do with the media. And if I don't say something here, I'm going to have them turning up my house again. The other reason for never whistleblowing is I don't know how low a celebrity status goes, sort of Z10. I'm one of them, and I do not want that at all. But if I don't say something here, they're going to pester me to say something until I go otherwise. So purely what it's going to say, very, very briefly, is that I don't want to be contacted by the media at all. And I've got absolutely no intention, unless it's any media, I've got no intention of saying anything whatsoever, further elaboration of what I said or anything else. It's for you, sir, and you, sir, to only ask me. I'm sure you do not need any help by me appearing on any TV programmes and saying, I think the chair should do this or otherwise. So I'm going to remain totally stum until your final report is there. And that's where I feel I think you're more than able to come up with any conclusions without me helping you and the media. So no more media contacts till the report's things. Then most importantly, what I really need to do is I need to make sure that my apology is through and through. So my first apology is to the dead children's family, that the identity that I personally took. And there's no justification, so I'm not getting into it and keeping it short as well. I'd like to make an apology as well to the Lawrence family, and this is the entire family, because I noticed that there's not a lot of mentions, but Stephen also had 2 siblings, and so that's another factor. It's the whole Lawrence family I'm apologising to for what I did, which obviously includes Baroness Lawrence, Sir Neville Lawrence, and also himself, somebody who really has been overlooked a lot of this, is Sir Dwayne Brooks. So that's an apology from that side of there. Also, all the Black Justice campaigns, because Stephen Lawrence is very important, but we mustn't forget those campaigns as well. And I did just write here, but we have covered it, is do not believe for 1 minute and do not accept that you were collateral intrusion. You weren't, you were deliberately spied on. I'd also like to apologise to all the activists. I felt that you were, Trotskyists, you're trying to overthrow the state and all the palaver that we've heard. So I felt that I was actually doing the right job. What I apologise for is the fact that some of you, your lives were affected. And I've spoken to some of the people, I'm saying in the public gallery, and certainly through blacklisting or AKA vetting that I may have been part of has affected your lives. So I'd like to apologise for that as well. And then, obviously, with regard to it as well, I'd like to apologise to the women that I personally had sex with in person deployment. There's no excuses. It's easy to come up with excuses, but basically, I shouldn't have done it. Then we're getting on to, just very quickly, I've been interviewed by Mr. Barr over the course of 4 days, an experience that I hope to never relive in my entire life again. But 4 questions that I was hoping Mr. Barr might have asked me, and I can certainly understand why he hasn't asked any other STS officers and managers the same questions, because I think they're in what I would call as collective denial. But basically, had Mr. Barr asked me the following questions. When you were employed in the STS, the Special Branch, did you think the Metropolitan Police, the STS, was institutionally racist? The answer to that would have been yes. Were they institutionally sexist? The answer would have been yes to that. Were they institutionally misogynistic? Yes, they were. This includes me. I'm not rowing myself out of any of this at all. Were they homophobic? Yes, they were. And it's all 4, absolutely clearly through and through, all 4. And basically, the only other area that's there is I have been a whistleblower. Reluctant to the magnitude it's actually reached. It was going to be my story and no other part of the story that was going to be there. But to this day, it was only 2 years ago, and my team can confirm this, because they've done a lot of work for me to contact the Metropolitan Police, asking for them to confirm that the OSA would not be used against me. So it took 13 years for them to actually say, finally, that you won't be prosecuted. I've got a brilliant legal team. From the first day I walked in, they've been looking after me, and they kept reassuring me that I wouldn't be prosecuted. However, it's quite a strain. So, I think we're there.
Thank you very much. Sir, you may have questions.
I have no questions of you. You've given evidence over 4 days with clarity and perseverance. I'm grateful to you for doing so.
Sure.
I know the strain that it is imposed upon you. I know notionally you're here under compulsion, but I have, as I've listened to you, understood that you are trying to do your best to fulfill a public duty. I acknowledge that. I'm grateful to you for it.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you. We will resume on Monday at 10.